Welcome to the RepairCast, a supply and demand podcast. We're your hosts, Haley,
Jake,
and James.
If you're a returning listener, welcome back. If you're new, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for joining. What are we going to talk about today?
Today we're going to go ahead and discuss right to repair. It's something that we touched on a little bit in the last episode, but this time we're just going to dive in a little bit deeper about it and talk about advocacy, our thoughts and opinions.
Sounds good.
Do you guys want to go ahead and do some introductions and talk about last week?
Yeah, sure. I guess I'll go first. My name's Jake Osborne, and I'm the CEO of Supply and Demand. We are excited to talk about this episode because we think you should always have the right to repair, especially if you own it. And I think going forward, it's always going to be a fight because you're always going to fight major corporations, or you're going to fight, I guess you could say, wealthy sides of other businesses that don't want to have things like patents or things like trademarks of those sorts violated. That's why patents a lot of times only have 7-year runs on them, mainly because the right to repair makes it that way, so that they give a head start to the person or the company who invents it. But once it's been on the market for a while, you usually get something generic come out, just like you do with everything else from food to drugs. And so, yeah, today is like a right to repair those items, I would say within the warranty period, which is usually within a year, all the way through the lifetime of the appliance. We're going to talk about planned obsolescence, and that is definitely a big thing because it can be like on purpose, but it also can be environmental, why they're putting that into effect, or it can also mean that something as simple as the material is not available anymore. So they get rid of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm excited to talk about it because we live in America, right? Land of all rights, free, so they call it,
Yeah, so they say.
Some may disagree, but I would say that, as far as having the freedom to purchase what we want to and the freedom to repair what we want to should always be something we should stand up and fight for sure.
The right to repair, like Jake and Haley said, we kind of touched on it last week, but it does empower a lot of people, and it gives people the right to repair their products. It keeps things out of landfills. It gives people jobs, instead of outsourcing those things and those materials to other places that might not be easy or convenient or could be more expensive. I like the right to repair. If you don't know what the right to repair is, you can go to repair.org. It'll kind of break things down for you and explain a little bit more eloquently what the right to repair does and how it can help economies, how it can help communities, or just how it can help you. One of the things that they talk about are the repair jobs can't be outsourced. Who would ship a washing machine from Chicago to Shanghai, and that sort of thing. But to Jake's point, you got to think about all the avenues. You got to think about, are the materials available? Are the materials hazmat? Can a regular person do this? And what are the liabilities and risks involved for the manufacturer, for the company, for the brand? You definitely don't want to have people inexperienced reaching inside of something and hurting themselves. So the right to repair tries to encompass all of that: the education, the resources, the access to be able to repair your own products.
And for anyone who's asking themselves, what is planned obsolescence?
Yeah, you dive into this because this is a heavy subject, so we're going to have to break it down.
I will. So planned obsolescence or premature obsolescence is best defined by Jeremy Bulow, I hope I pronounced that correctly, in his 1986 paper entitled An Economic Theory of Planned Obsolescence as a policy of planning or designing a product with an artificially limited useful life or a purposely frail design, so that it becomes obsolete after a certain predetermined period of time upon which it decrementally functions or suddenly ceases to function, or might be perceived as unfashionable.
Unfashionable. I never thought about that. Yeah.
Yeah, that one is actually, which we'll talk about a little bit more later, that's perceived obsolescence. That is one of the 7 variants of planned obsolescence. There are contrived durability, prevention of repairs, non-user replaceable batteries, perceived obsolescence, systematic obsolescence, programmed obsolescence, software lockout, and legal obsolescence. That sounds like a lot, but it covers pretty much every industry.
It's a really good breakdown of all the things. Obsolescence, what's the root word? Obsolete. What does that mean? It means moving on. They don't make things like they used to. I mean, that's really where we're at. But why? Why is that? Is it for profit? Is it for materials? We need to understand why. Are they doing it on purpose? And then what can we do to help ourselves? What can we do to learn? And what are the resources that we can seek out so that these don't become obsolete, so that we can fix our things, so that we can keep them longer, so that we don't have to throw them away and buy something new that's already probably obsolete. That's the point of repair.
Yeah, you're asking for transparency, which is kind of laughable, right?
For sure.
What corporation is going to be transparent? Let alone places that are doing this on purpose. What part of those 7 variants are they focusing on? Probably different avenues depending upon what is competition, what is legal. They want to stay ahead of the curve. And I think that's what you talked about with durability. That's always questioned. Like, you always see, like, this is heavy duty, made better, or durability could be perceived in a way where it's more environmentally friendly, when maybe it's really not. They're just advertised it that way. I mean, we live in a country where the First Amendment is freedom of speech. So you can practically say whatever you want. And I think that's going to be hard because anybody can go out there and be like, say any of this stuff, and you don't know if it's the truth.
Yeah, and like on that note, a lot of companies will try and say that repair or access to like blueprints and things like that are illegal under copyright laws, but it technically isn't. And this is like honestly a marketing ruse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's no sugarcoating, or getting around that. I mean, you're dealing with a lot of companies that have a lot of legal expertise at their disposal on retainer, and they're doing things, by the book, by the law. But as far as planned obsolescence, or premature obsolescence, I don't think you're going to get a clear explanation from anyone out there, because obviously the parts need to be made lighter. They need to be made cheaper. You want the consumer to be able to purchase it, but you also need to make a profit back to pay for the machining and the manufacturing. So yeah, you got the plastic parts out there versus the metal gears that used to be in washing machines. Now you got plastic motors with little electric switches. So it's really tough to give the consumers everything that they want, but then also to be able to make it last forever. So it's really a hard conundrum to be in the middle of how to appease where's the happy medium for the manufacturer, for the consumer, and for the repair technician.
Or there's things like you have on here, non-user replaceable batteries, but you could compare something like the main control board to that. So if a relay or a transformer or something else on the board goes out, a lot of times, unless you are mechanically inclined and you know how to do these repairs, what you're talking about, hard soldering onto a piece of electronic devices, so you better know kind of how to get those parts and put them on. But a lot of those boards are purposely made extremely expensive when actually they're not that expensive. And they do that on purpose to force you into a decision of, do I want to pay for 50% of what this machine is worth for a single part, or do I just want to go buy a new one? And so it makes it a very difficult situation for the consumer.
Yeah, and that would fall under the variant prevention of repairs. These items are products that are often designed to be impossible to service or to make it difficult. Some things that you can look at are tamper-resistant screws that cannot easily be removed without very, very specific tools and things like that. We talked about last week about how certain major appliance companies have like a Bluetooth dongle thing that you have to have in order to access their machines to repair them or service them and things like that.
To get them to run their own diagnostics,
Yeah. So unfortunately,
And
prevention.
like you have on here like a front load washer where they've molded the tub and the bearing together. Yeah,
Mhm.
this is something they started doing right when they started building front load washers. I mean, one of the first front load washers was Maytag Neptune, and when the bearing went out on that, it was like game over. You know, I mean, the amount of money it would cost to repair that,
Time, labor.
and time and labor, and the part itself was extreme. And in some cases, the manufacturer would make you buy the entire back end of a tub, and you would literally have to rebuild the whole machine from scratch. It was ridiculous. And so I'm not a fan personally of like front load washers. I think it's not naturally aerated. They do put fans in there, but water stays inside of a washer all the time. It sits in the pump or it sits in the bottom of the housing. And the problem with the front load washer is that when you shut that door, it seals. That fan does not run all the time. It may run when the machine's running, or it may run for a little bit after the machine cuts off. But once you shut that door, you are locking in all that smell. It's kind of like going to sleep and waking up and blowing bad breath everywhere.
Oh.
You know? But that's exactly what that is. But with a top load washer, you have a lot of aeration there, so naturally you get that natural air. But again, that's this perception of that a front load washer saves more water. Not anymore, because the way they make the top load ones, they use just as much water or less too.
Correct.
And then two, the idea of it's easier to get the clothes out. Well, I don't know about that. You're still having to bend down and do a whole bunch of stuff unless you gotta
unless it's up on a pedestal.
You got this thing on a pedestal.
Right.
Ours at home, we have a top loading washer, and it's just very tall, and I am 5'5.5". So when there's like socks or something at the bottom, I have to almost be completely in the washer to reach them.
That's fun though, right?
So I can see how
get to
some
dangle
people
your
would
feet
say,
off the ground, you know?
Yeah, like it's to the point where I've considered getting like just a small little step stool. But like I can see to the point where people say that a front loading washer is a little bit more convenient, especially if you are not as tall as most people are.
True, that is true in that aspect.
That's really my only comment about that. But back to the right to repair. If you do visit repair.org and get involved with right to repair advocacy, their goal is to put the power back into the hands of the consumer and to end planned obsolescence and every other negative aspect that comes with it. We've touched on the environmental aspect of it last episode, financial impact as well. Around 18 US states have active right to repair bills as of 2022, but the aim is to implement this in every state. And I know last week, James, you mentioned the end of ownership as far as right to repair can go.
Yeah, I haven't really gone in and checked that to read it all and to kind of get I still only know the title and kind of the synopsis of it, of the end of ownership, this planned obsolescence where manufacturers and companies remove all the risk and liability from themselves, make everything super cheap and super easy because that's what the consumer wants. But then the consumer also wants the ability to repair their appliances, or, I just spent $1,000 on this and it broke a year later. I don't want to go spend another $1,000. So the end of ownership is I still need to read up on that, but it's an interesting idea as to what are you paying at the checkout and what do you actually own. So it's an interesting concept, but that's a whole nother episode that we can get deeper into later.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, to me that's like self-driving cars. There's this idea with end of ownership there, such as they go out and they buy a whole bunch of self-driving cars, and then they go out and buy a whole bunch of repair places that do these repairs on the self-driving cars. And then basically, you don't need a car anymore because you just get on your phone and you can have something pick you up in a matter of minutes. And all of a sudden you're like, well, I don't have to have a car payment. I don't have to go out and pay 30, 40, 50 grand for a car. And I can just have anything be delivered, pick me up, take me wherever I need to go real fast. And I don't have to worry about maintenance. But you end ownership.
Yeah, imagine if you bought a new car like from Ford and you took it home and you drove it for 6-9 months and then you needed to change the oil. And changing the oil voided your bumper-to-bumper warranty. You know what I mean? Like that sort of thing, taking the right to repair out of the hands of the consumer, out of the hands of the person, out of the hands of the owner, is it can get out of hand, and where does that line stop? And where do we where's that happy medium again? So what can we have the ability to fix, or is it the manufacturer's responsibility to make stuff to last, or to make it modular, as we mentioned in our first episode, and make things replaceable? So yeah, it's a really tough line and a really tough debate.
It's hard because there's
Yeah,
people out there who they mess stuff up, man. They take it apart. They
loose screws, put it back
they
together
really
wrong.
they
Create
mess
more
the whole
problems.
machine up, and you're just kind of like, as a manufacturer, you're like, well, so you're gonna glue me against the warranty on this because this person decided to take things apart that they weren't supposed to, and they've messed the whole machine up. Now we, as a manufacturer, are responsible for their actions. That's not fair, So I would say, yeah, it depends, obviously, again, on a situation.
Yeah, and that's tough to do by case basis. So, and then you're talking about electronics, machinery, appliances. It's a really tough debate.
Especially when safety also comes into play with it too, because even if you have all these safety warnings in your instructions and you're like, hey, turn off the power at the breaker, unplug the appliance before you start any service on it, which all of our instructions do say that, there's still that risk where if someone hurts themselves, they're still going to come at you and be like, hey, I got hurt trying to replace your part, or I got hurt trying to work on your machine and that's your fault. And not everyone will do that if they get hurt, because some people will be like, oh, well, I didn't read the instructions.
Or they understand it was their fault.
Yeah, but some people will try to come after you that way, and then it's just like, what are we supposed to do about that?
Definitely. If you have an example, because it's something we've experienced before, someone takes a stovetop electrical element, 5 rings, 4 rings, 3 rings, something you just plug into what they call a terminal block on the top of a stovetop. Someone's element goes out. They buy an element from Supply and Demand. Mm-hmm. They take their element out and they put it over whatever, they throw it away, do whatever. And then they take our brand new one and they plug it in. Then turn it on and it sparks or pop, 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 or blows up, or whatever. Well, the reason that happens is most likely that terminal block and that entire oven is covered in some type of grease or oil. And so when it's re-electrified to something that works properly, it ignites all that. A lot of people who are not experienced in that field, they do hurt themselves. And if you open up the inside of a dryer, it is incredibly sharp, because when they make it, they are not going through there with a grinder making all the edges nice and smooth for you. It's just not made that way. So it's just, they're cutting down metal, and basically it's like sharp sheet metal. So you can just move your arm the wrong way. It's, you got to cut, and so let alone getting electrically shocked because you forgot to unplug it, or you can get shocked with it unplugged because it can have a capacitor, which can energize any electrical devices, and by you grabbing it, you shock yourself and you think, I had it unplugged. So there's a lot of things that happen where the manufacturer has a very good reason for you not to go into the machine.
Yeah.
Because, there is hazard in there. God, speaking of the right to repair, in short, life expectancy, smartphones, man. I swear to God, I have to buy a new cell phone. It costs me $1,000 every 2 years. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, well, at least my refrigerator runs for 10 plus years. You know what I mean? And it's just like these constant updates you have to do on a lot of these smart devices is exhausting sometimes. I do know appliances are not that bad. Like, you're not having to go in there and be like, the washer has an update. I need to go in here and hook it to the Wi-Fi and let it update for the next 30 minutes.
Now, the new appliances, I don't own any of the new appliances, the ones that can talk to Wi-Fi or give you weather updates or tell you what's in your fridge. So that's a whole nother era for me to get into, because I haven't even touched on that. But those do have firmware updates and things like that. My mom even has a Wi-Fi oven. so she can turn it on to preheat on the
Turn
way.
on.
Yeah, she can
Hey.
turn it on to preheat on the way home, and she can even get notifications and push notifications on her cell phone when the oven's
I like
ready.
that.
So it's convenient so that she doesn't have to be there, but
I kind of feel like with all these newer appliances that do have like a screen on it and Wi-Fi and things like that, that could potentially become an issue with programmed obsolescence and perceived obsolescence, because
Definitely.
perceived obsolescence, you can think of fast fashion and aesthetic driven. In my notes, I wrote fruit company because we don't want to cause any issues naming names.
Yeah.
How it'll be the exact same phone is released, but they'll have different colors. So it's people will be like, oh, I have to get that phone, and so they'll just throw away their old one.
Oh, well, the appliances, they do the same thing. There's like a red front load washer.
Yeah.
And a blue one. And the red one's $14.99. Maybe it's more than that now. $19.99. And then the blue one is like $19.99. And then the white one's $17.99. So somehow these colors are $200 more. I don't know what paint store they're going to, but that's some expensive paint.
That's some perceived obsolescence. It's style and aesthetic driven, and companies will just release new colors or colorways in order to get people to buy this new thing and be a repeat customer.
and the consumers buy it, so it's what they want.
Yeah, I will say pink is my favorite color. If I want something in pink, it's going to be a lot more expensive than if I just got it in black or white.
You've even got appliances that purely manufacture with the idea of like nostalgia.
Yeah.
The retro styles.
They manufacture it like there's one appliance and a brand in particular that manufactures that way, to where it feels like it's a 1960s, 1970s refrigerator or etc. And they make them in all types of different colors. So you probably get it in pink.
I've actually looked at those before, but it's just they are smaller. They're like apartment or dorm size.
True. I think the brand's called Smeg.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so they're really a unique brand, but there's a lot of things happening out there.
I think I
that
actually
you can-
have like their very tiny version of it. That's like
Yeah.
a desk one that I use for my skincare products.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah,
But again, that's a fashion item.
It is.
So you're and when that item, they decide that we don't want to make this anymore. Yeah, they have the ability to end it when they want. As far as replacement parts, that as well. And replacement parts are hard to get for some brands. Like literally, some brands only sell the parts from themselves. There is no distributor. You have to actually contact the brand and buy the product from them, which means now they control the price, the structure, and the availability, which is risky for their part. If I get upset personally about an appliance and I cannot find a replacement part, it really starts making me think, should I buy any more of that brand stuff? Because if it's so hard to repair, so hard to find stuff, and making it so difficult, then if I buy the next item, is it going to be the same thing? Now, most appliance brands, the popular ones, you can find access to the product, for the most part, unless it's a very aged item.
If the brand or manufacturer is pricing their product in a premium price range, they're probably hedging their bets that most of those people that have the money to get up into that price range are probably not going to be the same type of people that spend the time or money fixing their appliances. So I feel like some of those premium lines that make it really difficult, that where you have to go directly to the manufacturer, they won't even tell you the part number of parts. It's like, well, just let a tech come out and diagnose it and repair it for your safety and all this other stuff. But yeah, it gets, again, it's a debatable thing. They're just hedging their bets that their consumer or their customers, aren't going to dig in and want the parts and replace it. They'll just pay to repair it.
I always tell customers would ask me all the time, I would say, what should I go out and buy? What do you want out of it? Is the real question.
Right.
Do you want something that's fashionable? Do you want it with all the bells and the whistles? Do you want it to be able to do other things that your old one couldn't do? You know, like, what do you want? And if the answer was, I just want something that lasts a long time where I don't have a lot of problems, then my answer was always, then go buy the one that has the least amount of programs on it, cycles on it, bells and whistles on it. Buy the simple, stripped down version.
I always stuck to the mid-range. I didn't go too fancy. I didn't go too cheap. And, you know, I've been very happy with my appliances. I haven't had many issues because there's just not a lot on it to break. So you just have kind of the main components with a few little extras, and that does me good. And I haven't had many issues. I haven't had to put money into the appliances. So, you know, so far I'm making out.
Yeah, my worry with like getting one of the brand new ones that has a screen on it is, what if the manufacturer decides that the software that originally came on that they're no longer going to keep updating that? Kind of how like with Fruit Company, after a certain amount of phones are released, a certain amount of phones are released, and then they stop updating the older ones, and they're like, you just got to get a new one. And it's like, why? There's nothing wrong with this. You just want me to spend more money.
Again, why is it so hard to take care of my appliances or my products and keep them up to date and keep them working efficiently?
Yeah, I mean, if I went down this your right to repair, and I went through each one, I'd say, like, you know, contrived durability, again, is a marketing tactic, mostly for appliances. Because, you know, you can make an appliance last a pretty long time, even if you're using non-factory parts. You know, the durability of that appliance is, again, going to be related to another factor, which is your prevention of repairs, which that's going to involve electronics. So, and that's a big part of the planned obsolescence, because you're talking about timers, control boards, anything that's electronic, like even if it's a pump, like a water pump or a motor, you know, things that have to have some type of electrical power to push it, can obviously be a prevention of repairs by making it not available.
They're not made to be serviceable.
Perceived obsolescence, I would say, appliances don't really have a lot of fashion built into them, I would say. You know, like if I walk into someone's kitchen, you know, I can definitely tell like what type of fashion it is for sure. You know, you go walk into a new house, and then 10 years later you walk into it again, you're like, oh, this is old. Look at this kitchen. This is awful.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, this is 10 years old. You know?
I know that, like, in relation to perceived obsolescence, like having a white refrigerator became kind of just like, oh, you have a white refrigerator?
Yeah.
At least like with my generation. And then it was the black refrigerators. And I know now that like stainless steel is really popular. But also, I do kind of enjoy like the farmhouse aesthetic, just because I think
that's what's popular right now. The Magnolia Farm kind of.
Yeah, so
Yep.
I see videos all the time where people are like painting their refrigerators and things like that. And I think an aesthetic like that, because perceived obsolescence is aesthetic driven, could cause people to go out and purchase an appliance that's already that color or that style, replacing theirs that is like perfectly fine and functional,
definitely,
just because they want to fit in with that aesthetic, and they don't necessarily want to fix it themselves or paint it themselves, or they're not really sure how to do it properly.
Yeah, because not everybody has a laundry room that's just kind of tucked away in the corner of your house that nobody sees. Some people have laundry rooms that are right in the front door. You know, you come in through the garage, you have a big opening, there's your appliances, you come into the kitchen.
It's part of the kitchen.
It's part of the kitchen. You have it's a presentation.
Like European style.
It becomes a presentation. It becomes part of the design, part of your aesthetic. So it's interesting. I'm looking at this SMEG stuff right now, and that's, you can definitely cool tell stuff. It's very cool, very designed. They have really good colors, clean lines. So I can definitely tell they're a brand that's really focusing on the aesthetic side of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And thankfully that kind of style is in right now, because I know that as far as like fashion goes and some home trends, that like the 60s and 70s sort of styles are really popular, but what if that
because of the farmhouse, probably. Yeah.
And like, what if that starts changing?
And it will. It always does.
Yeah, the trends. So what'll be next, you know?
You know, you always want the new things coming out. Appliances are the same thing. The good thing about appliances is like I would say once they're glued into your kitchen, unless it breaks or unless you're doing like you're redoing the whole kitchen, like you're putting in new cabinets or whatever, right? You
Mm.
know, a lot of times you're not going to see people like replace it just to do it. Like, I don't walk around Lowe's or Home Depot and I'm just like, oh, that refrigerator looks awesome. You know what? I'm going to spend $3,000 right now. Or you move into a new home and it's got a white refrigerator, a black dishwasher, and a stainless steel oven. And it drives you crazy.
That would drive
And
me
so,
crazy.
you want to go over and like, I want to make these all match. So I see that happening too, but I would say that, the good thing is that you don't see that common. Like, I don't walk outside of my house and see just people wheeling out appliances.
Yeah.
Like, I got to get rid of this. It works. Does anybody want it? But not like other stuff we buy, like phones are the absolute craziest, because to me, it's just like, like you said, it's a phone that looks exactly the same. What's this going to do for me? And you usually stick to that phone brand that is around, whether you like, a Samsung or a Google or some other type of Android device, or you like an Apple, which you obviously will have to get through Apple.
Yeah, like aesthetically, I do enjoy an Apple phone, but the thing is, all of my things are backed up on Google and things like that. So that makes me buy a Samsung phone, and I have a Samsung phone and watch and tablet.
Yeah.
So all those things sync up. And that's another way to get you to stay buying from that company, is they make everything sync up and go together.
Yeah, I do that with Google. I have like Google
Yeah.
Home, and then I have like Google Music, and I
Yeah.
have it all hooked together, so it just all flows.
Yeah, so like if I switch a phone, if I get another Samsung, all I have to do is just download all the Google apps, and I have all access to all of my past pictures and things like that, and all of my contacts, and I don't have to worry about it.
It's wonderful, right?
Yeah. And like, I know that if you have an Apple phone and you have a Mac and stuff like that, it's the same as with like the Samsung stuff. All your stuff is all synced up.
It's so great.
And yeah, and I can see that in the future with these smart appliances being sort of similar to where, like, if you did have to update your appliance or whatever, you wouldn't have to change any of your settings or anything like that. You'd just get a new appliance and you're good to go.
Yeah. Yeah, appliances are slightly tricky and different because, one, there's a lot of them. There's not just like a phone, you got one. This is it. Might have different styles, but it's not like this one microwaves, this one washes, this one refrigerates. So there's just like a lot of things in appliances.
But I can see like all the brands having their own different like hubs, and it's like, oh, all of these things, you can make them communicate all together and run your house so efficiently and like stuff like that. Like, not saying that that's a bad thing. That would be really cool if we had all smart appliances that communicated with a hub and it made your house run more like water and electrical efficiently.
Sure.
But that's also really expensive.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of what you were saying there about just all the appliances linking up. For example, like I have a Nest thermostat. So in the event that one of my smart smoke detectors, if it were to sense CO2, or if it picked up something like that, it actually, because it's a Nest thermostat, controls my furnace. It will actually shut my furnace off. Now, there are safety mechanisms designed within these appliances, even if they're not the same brand, that will help you be efficient. So I'm already seeing a little bit of what you mentioned there, of different smart appliances working together for safety or for efficiency. So I'm excited about the right to repair if it continues to move forward. I'm excited to see what brand embraces the right to repair and starts making things a little bit more modular and a little bit easier and accessible. There is one brand already on my mind that they have a website that allows consumers to get on to get some information. So it's already kind of starting, but we're still very, very early, and with only less than half of the states signed on, it's going to take some time.
Well, I think the right to repair mainly involves the automobile industry. Appliances, are cheaper, obviously, than a car is. So, and I feel like the aftermarket industry of the appliances has been around for a while, since like Gemline and all those companies, but not now. The way the aftermarkets have come into play in the last few decades
Mm-hmm.
has been much stronger, and now a lot of people have more access to aftermarket or generic products to fix their appliances.
Mhm.
And so I think it's making it a little bit more of a discussion in our industry now, for sure. 5-10 years ago, it was under full on attack, like the OEMs are like, you do not have the right to repair anything. This is all ours. Get out. We're going to smash you into the ground. We're going to do whatever it takes to make sure. We're going to go after distributors. We're going to go after anybody that gets in our way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And which is unfortunate, because all you're trying to do is make it to where the consumer can, one, save some money in their pocket, and two, get access to the repair. But what the
Yeah.
OEMs will do is they'll go with the perception that by buying a generic part, you're putting at risk yourself and you're putting at risk the appliance,
Mhm.
which is, we all know, bogus. It's like telling someone who's taken a generic drug and not the branded drug that there's a difference, which we know is not true.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's the same thing that rings for everything else. And so whether you want to talk about vehicles or anything else, generic food, if I go buy the Cheerios, which ones, you know what I mean? It's like, it's going to be the same practically. So it just depends on maybe your perception of it more than anything. And the bad thing with brands and OEMs is that they can misinform by going out there saying that, or giving the perception that the generics are going to harm you or harm them in some way, which is not the truth at all. We want to work together with compatibility, because not everybody is living at the 1% or even 10%.
Mhm.
We have to work for the middle class. We have to work for the poor. We have to work for everybody so that they can have access to all this stuff and repair it. And sometimes people can't afford this up here, but it shouldn't mean that they are limited in how they can go about repairing it.
Exactly.
For sure. Not to plug another company's stuff, but Eric watches a lot of car stuff, since we're on the topic of cars.
Mhm.
And there's this YouTube channel, it's called Donut Media. They have two cars that are very similar, and they put aftermarket generic items on one car
Neat.
and then the OEM version on the other car, and sort of test it.
Yeah.
And they call it high car, low car. Their tagline is expensive, more better.
Right.
And like it tests stuff like that. And
Mhm.
it shows you that like generic isn't always a bad option.
No.
And a lot of times the low car would win out versus the high car for like
I think it
certain
depends what
things.
generic you're buying, because if you're buying
for sure.
a supply and demand product, you're going to get a high quality product that's
Absolutely.
been tested and has also been backed by the manufacturing, in some cases, that have done the OEM product itself.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And so I think, you're getting a lot of viable proof that this item's going to hold up. But you do have to be careful with someone who's selling something that doesn't have a track record.
Mm.
I'm not saying that new product or new brands is a bad thing. I'm not saying that at all. But if you're having something that has bad reviews, or something that we're going to save $1 or $2 on, that's where I would be like, like James was talking earlier, like, maybe don't buy the most expensive one,
Mhm.
but don't buy the cheapest one either,
Yeah.
because sometimes that gets you in trouble. So buy the middle of the pack with the good reviews, and you're probably going to be good.
Yeah, just do the Olympic standard. Just take out the high score, take out the low score, find an average in the middle, and that should be exactly kind of where you want to be. Me personally, I don't go for the premium, but I don't go for the cheap stuff either. Usually those are reserved for landlords, people with a lot of properties, high turnover, people that are just coming and going, maybe somebody that's not taking care of the appliances. I've seen people wash their motor parts, their car parts inside their dishwasher to get all the oil or grease and stuff off. And, I've had to clean those drain hoses. So, so you really have to find what appliance is best for you. And then that's where we come in to try to help you maintain it and get the most longevity out of your appliance.
Until you get systematic obsolescence, because let's face it, if you own an air conditioner and it has R22 in it, you are going to spend a boatload of money if that refrigerant ever leaks out. And two, an example of this is R22 is no longer manufactured. So you can only buy what's available on the market.
Is R22 it's different than Freon?
Yeah,
or...
so Freon is R12. That was the name of it. So technically, Freon isn't the name of what's in the appliances or cars or whatever. It's called actually refrigerant, and there's different subtypes of refrigerant.
Okay.
And so the subtype for R12, which was a very old refrigerant, was called Freon. And so then that just became kind of a term that people used. I think R22, and I may be wrong, but R12, for instance, to buy a propane tank full of R12, like 10 years ago, it was like $600. So that's systematic obsolescence. They're purposely not making that anymore. And for good reason, because it's a pollutant. So it goes up and it destroys the ozone.
Correct.
But again, so I feel like some of systematic obsolescence, some of it is good because it's environmental stuff. They're trying to systematically get rid of it.
Yeah, there's a reason why it's being phased out or becoming obsolete.
Yeah. And then the other one is with systematic, though, is, let's face that, is it based on profit? They have to have you come back and continue to buy it. When they stop making a part, that's a choice, especially when it's some plastic parts. Like, come on, you could have 3D printed this. What do you mean it's no longer available? It's ridiculous. It probably cost them a nickel to make, or 50 cents. We'll give them that, so it's just like, there's no reason to get rid of it.
Looking into like 3D printers recently, there are 3D printers that straight up can print metal parts.
Oh yeah.
I've looked into the material costs, and it's a pricey investment up front to buy all of the stuff, but once you look at what you're making and how much material you're using, it's not that expensive.
Well, they're using that in every industry, the airplane, automobile, and they all use 3D printers. So it's just that's a new thing that they'll just advance upon. But yeah, so this idea again that you can't get a repair part, especially on something in the future that was made with 3D printing. Oh, now you're really kind of pulling people's legs.
Yeah.
But program obsolescence, systematic obsolescence, I would say those, I don't know, those feel like very similar items in some ways, because the programmed could also be an environmental thing. Doesn't want to run water longer or whatever, to use less electricity. Instead of being a AC voltage, it's switching to something like DC voltage. There's a lot of differences in that. Now, when I'm particularly talking about the appliance industry, I feel like the right to repair is different for every industry, obviously. But in some cases, you can see it is purely happening. Like you can see it right in front of you, whether it's phones or whether it's printers or whether it's, other things. You can see it's happening, but is it happening in the appliance industry as much as those places or as wide open in front of you? I would say yes and no, but it would depend on some factors of the appliance itself. Because if the appliance is one that breaks a lot or let's say it causes a boatload of class action lawsuits, well, they may plan to get rid of that real quick. So, But here's a good one with programmed obsolescence. Water filters. Okay, so refrigerator water filters. This has been a fight for a long time. Generic water filters. I mean, they're all over the place. But, if you go buy an OEM water filter, that's going to run you anywhere from $50 to $80. And they want you to replace it every 6 months. But a generic, obviously, you can go buy a 6-pack for that, But what some brands started doing was putting chips into the filters so that they could not work. The generics could not work inside the appliance. How that is not illegal is, I don't know how they got around that loophole. But so basically they were going to force you to buy the filter with the chip in it. And then they were going to sign basically a contract with whoever makes the chip saying you can only sell this to me.
So the main camera battery just died.
Okay.
And the GoPros turned off because the cameras got too hot. So we have no camera feed for us right now.
Okay.
All right, so it's just me.
That battery was fully charged, I would like to say.
You're fine.
Okay.
Yeah. We just have to we'll have to tighten this up in the future episodes to like a tight 45 or
a tight 45.
To keep it.
That's right.
Yeah. But we'll get there.
But anyways, like I said, the appliance industry, water filters. I mean, to take away a consumer's right to get filtered water is kind of insane. But they were going through all the efforts, and then they were doing perceived by saying that if you buy generic, you could cause flooding in your house. It could cause everything. It voids warranties. They're not going to cover any of the damage, and just all this crazy stuff. And so, and I understand like some of it, but to put a chip in a water filter, I mean, how that is not inhumane. I don't know how else to describe it.
Yeah.
It's water. They paid $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 for this refrigerator, and you're going to tell me that you're going to restrict them where they have to go out and buy this specific water filter with a chip in it.
I know that like coffee filters, or I think it was, I'm going to bleep that brand out. Some coffee makers that require like a pod in them started printing the top of the foil with very specific ink. So the coffee maker would read that, and if you were using like generic pods, it wouldn't make the coffee for you and it wouldn't recognize it. So there would be people that would save like the foil from past ones to stick onto their generic ones so they could not have to pay an exorbitant amount of money.
See, this is again why I'm always like, if the manufacturers or the companies make it easy for the consumer, they will always come back. But if you make it hard for them, they will perceive your brand and whatever else you're selling as a step back, and maybe they'll think twice before they buy it again. Because if you make it easy for the consumer, they're gonna know that feeling. They're always gonna know this is an easy company to deal with. Amazon, I can buy anything on there and I can return it. The reason that people use Amazon a lot of times is because of that feature. They know it's easy and they don't have to worry about it. But if I go to a store and they're going to hit me with a 15% restock fee when I bring this thing back in, I may think twice about buying that from there again.
Absolutely.
And I may say, you know what? Look on Amazon. Go buy it on there. And I'm not just saying that that's for every store or anything like that, but it's just an example of a company making it easy for the consumer. So when these brands make it hard for the consumer because they're doing planned obsolescence or they're doing some type of programmed obsolescence controls or something like that because you can't use generic, and they're being immoral and unethical about giving you the right to repair it because you did buy this machine, you spent the money, and now all of a sudden they're telling you, oh, wait, you can only use our products with this machine. Well, that wasn't the deal when I bought it. That wasn't well explained to me.
Yeah. Any thoughts, James?
I don't have any other thoughts. I think we pretty much covered the right to repair in depth with these first two episodes. And I think that's really a launching pad for us. The right to repair, as it says on the repair.org website, is the lifeblood of local economies. People that are choosing to indulge themselves with tools and learning a new skill, learning a new trade. This can make products last longer, keep stuff out of waste and landfills, reduce e-waste, just like it says on their website, save owners money by lengthening the lifespan of their appliances, and create local jobs. People may want to learn these skills. Just like me, I didn't have any skills. I was throwing bags and doing stuff at the mall. And then Jake and his dad gave me the opportunity to come on board with no experience, just a tool bag. And then I was able to learn the skill and the trade and of repair. You can use that in so many different areas of life. It's not just fixing appliances. It's giving you the mentality to know how things work and giving you the confidence to get in there and repair it. That's what it's about. That's the essence of what it's about. And the right to repair is a really good first step to give people, to enable people, and to give them the confidence and the ability to do what I did, to learn a trade, learn a craft, learn how to use tools, and learn how to repair. It's a really fulfilling trait, that I was able to obtain from Jake and his dad, and a really great skill and trade that no one can ever take away from me. That's just something that's ingrained in me now, is that that joy of getting into things with tools and things and fixing it and making it work again. I enjoy that skill, and I'm happy to have that experience.
All right. Well, I think we can sign off from there.
Alrighty. Would you like to go ahead and do that today?
Sure.
All right.
All right. Thank you for listening to the RepairCast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider following and leaving a rating or a like. As always, you can drop a comment or question to our email, podcast@supplyingdemand.org. Also, check the episode description for everywhere else you can find us, including our website, Instagram, and YouTube. That's all for this week. We'll see you next time.